No worries.
I'm out of your hair.
Cool. So welcome all to GA4 is not ready for production discussion. And the change my mind is they're really almost like I can play a bit of devil's advocate, but this is more about finding like what needs to happen in our GA4. What are the main issues? Why it didn't become the default tool straight ahead, because like it's Google. We would hope for them to launch a tool that is perfect, even though they have the culture of beta. So the situation and what gave name to this discussion is the response is GA4 has been getting for pretty much 9 months. Even if from the beginning there have been responses of missing features. We are still waiting for these things. How do we do these things? And the learning curve being a bit more harder than with GA3. Article from Search Journal, SGAM, Google Analytics 4 backlash, GA4 sucks and it's horrible, really well collects a lot of recent feedback about GA4 from the search marketing community, which is a big segment of GA users. So they need to be satisfied to use the tool and be able to use it for the purposes they use it. And the name of the presentation comes from Matteo, who I think is in participants. Let me check. Yes, he is here, so he can speak from his perspective. But he said simple thing in response. GA4 is not ready for the production. Features are missing. And saying this is recently, this is like 1 week ago. After 9 months since launch, there's still features missing. There is this hope, but this hope has been here for 9 months, like the feature coming. And yeah, so Matteo can speak about it. And I know he also has like already added slide at the end of this deck. And that's what I would like to anybody who would like to discuss anything specific. On slide 18, I think there is a like this empty slide. Copy this slide. You should be able to go in, copy it, and add any of let's say issues or pet peeves with GA4. Or if you want to even like change my mind and say like for your purpose, GA4 is perfect, you can use that slide in some way so we can just address it when we get there after we do this like first run. So in those 9 months, and speaking from perspective of, I work as analytics director, work with big clients, and they are asking, well, what should we do with GA4 if they are aware? And I feel like there's this consensus, and you can debate this if you don't feel like this, but everywhere from like from experts, from like all the back channels, it's start using GA4 and Universal Analytics side by side. So do double tracking, start building the data for the main reason that there is no consistency in GA3 and GA4 data, and build the data so in future you might do a switch when the time comes. So, and that's just kind of given understanding of the current climate or situation. But like obvious, and as analysts, we go there and we try it out. But there's many other users who are like, why would we do that? Like what's the purpose? What's the additional value? That's a big point of discussion. Then one thing that is also considered is implementation process and additional cost. If you look at this thing from perspective of enterprise level clients who have 40, 50 tags, like the accounts, they have hundreds of views. Suddenly it's a massive transition project for many clients. And again, the question of value is still there, but then there's also the question of additional cost from enterprise level, but also from the level of like small businesses or like one-person businesses. Again, why would they invest energy there when they have business to run? There is question of to fix something that is not broken. From analysis perspective, GA3 enables, like we've been used to GA3 for, I don't know if it's like 10 years. People are used to it. They know how to do things, and they are like, it's like, why would you teach old dog new tricks if there is no additional value? And there is some learning curve consideration. Seemingly in GA4, some things might be harder to do, whether it's because people are not used to them, or for other reasons, because some features are not yet there, or you need to find workarounds around some things you are used to. So you are adding learning curve. So for also analysis, but also implementation, as it has differences. So those are like the areas. I kind of grouped a couple of issues, and on next slide, I'll let anybody else talk. But yeah, so for value, there is some lack of features that is being mentioned. There's additional cost. There's some more complexity in some things, and you are missing continuity of data. So there's no straightforward benefit of, okay, I install GA4 and I can start doing like long-term analysis or only short-term analysis. Implementation issues, as I said, for small or medium businesses or enterprise, there's different reasons why not to go there quickly, or why nobody's rushing unless they have some particular reason. Small businesses, they have limited analytics capability. Enterprise level, they have huge complexity. And both of those pose interesting challenges for GA4 implementation. And from analysis perspective, so our like the end users, we are looking into the data, we are trying to find the insight. There's the learning curve. There has been a bit of lack of educational material. There is like some now you can find yours, but for many people it's like, how do I basic things that I did before in GA3? How do I do them in GA4? And some you cannot do because there's different almost measurement framework behind it. The user experience of navigating GA4 to get those things, and then the conflicting, the accessing the data through BigQuery. So GA4 goes there, enables it, but for some of the end users, this is just another level of complexity that goes beyond their head. Like, why should I get this basic thing that I was able to get out of GA3 only through going through more complex setup? So it enables a lot, but for big chunk of analytics users, it's just more complex universe they need to suddenly somehow navigate. So generally to the value, and I'm opening the discussion. So I'm not sure how this will work out because like who wants to talk, but Matteo is here, so he can address this. But generally, the value of GA4 is still being like discussed for many users. They just don't understand straight why. What is it doing better? And there's things that are missing. So features that are missing, and users are like, why would I go there if this is if some basics are still not there? Anybody would like to join here? Or Matteo, you can definitely jump and expand on your quote.
Matteo, I can make you I can bring you on stage if you'd like. If I can find you. There you are.
And I always thought of this more like open discussion. And I know it's a bit hard to manage like 30 people, but the question is of like, is the value of GA4 there? Like, I know long-term value, but is there value there for you to join?
Here we are. Hi, guys. For me, GA4 is a very interesting tool because I have a new data model thinking about not only for the web browsing, but for all things, apps. Next time we will see Internet of Things, smart TV, and so on. So the data model is correct. The great problem is how to understand the normal user that is they use universal analytics, and so they are a completely different experience for the tools. GA4 is thinking for the analyst people, and so for me is this the main reason why you try GA4 and why you use GA4, but it's not the software to user people, the final user people. So for me, this is the main reason. The misconcept is I don't not suggest GA4, but I suggest to use GA4, but in a specific thing. You have to try it. You have to understand the new data model, because in the future, the GA4 will be the only tools that we can use. So this is why, when the people ask on Twitter and so on, why we use GA4, because there is no a great user experience. Reports don't work, and so on. But the reason is you have to understand the data model, how they grab the information, the name of the events, the parameters. There are a lot understandable things in GA4, but in Universal we have the same things in another stuff. So for me, GA4 is you have to use both Universal and just to understand how it works. And of course, there are a lot of features that are only in GA4 and not in Universal. For example, predictive audience is really cool. BigQuery, of course, but is another things is just for data science, or for the people that use SQL, BigQuery, and so it's another level up for me for these tools. So this is my opinion. In the last, I put some other slides to talk about the limits of GA4, because it's no sense some limits of GA4. So if you want to go on, Andrej.
I've added Craig to the list. Craig had a good comment in the chat, so I've added Craig to the.
As much as I agree with everyone else on GA4 readiness, and you should be running it parallel, and you're definitely going to need to know both. I had an epiphany once, because I worked on a site for Google where they had actually properly configured Universal Analytics with a human readable event taxonomy. It was actually using a form of grammar, right? So when you looked at a flow report, it read like, and then they clicked on this in the footer, and then they moved to that part of the page, and then they started filling out the form, and it was like a story. And I was like, holy hell, never seen anything before like this. But it made it incredibly easy as an analyst to slice and dice people across behavioral dimensions and behavioral waypoints. And that was the moment for me when I thought, right, like old school is pages, right? We think, oh, people go to a page, but a page is a whole set of interactions that people have on that page. What happens if the pages, like, they spend 9 minutes on it and interact with 50 different things on the page? That old school model doesn't really work. So event driven is the way to go. But the problem with Universal Analytics is that nobody has the dev resource time or wants to spend the money getting an analyst to instrument all of that stuff to make it happen, wiring up the idiosyncratic signals of user behavior in your product into GA. And GA4 at least solves some of that, but I don't think it completely solves it. It's not going to, no analytics product is plug and play out of the box. There's just got to be a big realization as part of all of this. But GA4 will make having that kind of nice event model possible. But yeah, there's a lot of other things missing there.
Thanks, Craig. I totally agree. There is some really good comment from James Cottrell in the chat. James, could you just speak on it?
I will find him.
James Cottrell.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with James there.
Oh, there you go. James, you're invited on stage.
Yeah, I think the point there is absolutely right. It depends on the value people are getting out of it, and that's looking at the way that they extract data. Do they do serendipitous sort of analytical things, or are they looking at data that's been prepared and aggregated for them? Both forms of analysis are good. It's not one versus the other. Sometimes just by having a look around in Google Analytics, I find things that I would not find if the data had been served to me on a golden platter.
And maybe just to add there, yeah, it seems like GA3, it's a bit friendlier to the end user or like marketer, while GA4 is more like has the analyst heaviness, like, or it's a bit more heavy on the analyst side, and that might be like one of the issues.
Yeah, supposedly GA4 was designed to make it easier for a non-frequent user and not have to figure out the 100+ reports and UA and stuff. But man, it's hard to believe that it's really for beginners.
Yeah, and the problem is, even if you scrape a whole load of event traffic, right, there's going to be a whole bunch of that either has been set up incorrectly, right, so it doesn't actually reflect the user signal that the collected name says it does, right, and that happens a lot now with UA, you know, and so how are you going to make sure that you are only collecting the signals that you actually need rather than a whole bunch of other stuff that's just telling you people interacting with things that really don't help your business model or your analysts or anything else. So I mean, I always used to kind of recommend, you know, collecting as much event data as possible, but I realized that what then happened with people is that they ended up with event confetti. It was like it was snowing so much nobody could see anything, right? Because and they didn't think about the tech event, so it became impossible for human beings. Only analysts could analyze the event taxonomy because only they understood where it was all wrong and broken and stuff. You know, it's so there's swings and roundabouts. You can say, oh, we'll collect all this event data out of the box, and that's brilliant and everything else, but is that going to happen automatically and perfectly? No. Will it be better than asking people to instrument it all from hand from the start? Yeah, probably. Moves the problem around a bit.
So Daniel had a great point in the chat about clients who are only on GA4. Well, actually, Daniel, I won't make your point for you, so go ahead.
Cheers. Hey folks, how you doing? Yeah, I think this is also my perspective too. I started off as a pessimist, and I'm now a bit of an advocate for GA4, and I've been using it since it was in beta for maybe over a year now. And it started off being complicated and awful and the crap UI and things like this. But the reality is, I think what I've settled on to now, and what I've seen with my clients that are using it, is that it's such an easier data model to understand from scratch. So comparing it to Universal Analytics, yes, of course, it's completely different and it's hard to kind of bridge that gap. But if you're coming at it fresh, there are just events. And if I want this event in my report, I pull it in. And if I want this in my report, I pull it in. And obviously they're updating the UI now, so it makes that a little bit easier and configurable. But with so I've also run many GA training sessions on GA3 and 4, and trying to get through explaining scope to someone in Universal Analytics that's never come across it before is possibly one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And then also say, there's no great resource for this, you just have to figure it out and get familiar with it. And it's like, well, why can't I pull users in my page view report, or why can't I put conversions in my page report, or these kind of things? So I just like, you can't, sorry, different scopes. Whereas I think with GA4 now, it's like, well, you want conversion events, put it in. Session starts a session, so it's pull that event in, pull this event in here. And I think what I've seen, again, it's still obviously very early days. We're aware of that. I think
I agree with you a lot.
Is just so much better.
A lot of people struggle with understanding that data model and don't really understand hit, page view, session, user, in terms of how the data is actually collected and how that's calculated in GA. So then it's really hard for them to understand what it's saying to them, because they don't actually understand what that really means in reality, right? It hasn't been decomposed for them. So that's a very good point. And yeah, I would contend that event-driven models, especially if you've got the right events and naming structure that people can
Absolutely.
recognize, are way more intuitive, for people to use. So, but I still have the feeling that this has been pushed a bit fast. It's like, oh, we've got this other thing here. We can kind of hack this, and it will probably be a better long-term path for us in terms of data storage. It isn't really, but it wasn't really built for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of make a lot of changes to it. So it wasn't like GA4 was architected from the ground up to be GA4. It was sort of like a transmogrification of another product.
Firebase.
And
It's Firebase, right?
yes,
It's
exactly.
not Google Analytics. It's Firebase
Yeah.
in
No.
classic Google mode. They bought a company. It's better, so they switched everything out over to that. And I suppose we can go into the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory time. But GA4 is not an analytics tool, right? It's an ad platform. It's an advertising tool. I know it's in the Google marketing platform, same as Universal, but everything they're doing is around pushing that data to embellish it with the Google signals and the YouTube enhanced view conversions over time, or whatever that looks like. You're going to be pushing it back into the ad platform. So in the Google walled garden state, within that kind of ecosystem, in terms of the kind of first party data, that's what it's for. I mean, if you were just an analyst just looking at analytics data, there's probably better, more secure tools out there you could explore. And I think where they're moving with GA4 is very much around focus its energy on the advertising side. And that's why the BigQuery feed exists, because if you just want the data, you can go over here. If you want to use the UI, it's all about integrating and pushing and pulling that data left, right, and center. I find it's almost like a different focus. So GA4 is not like an upgrade to Universal. It's almost like it's answering a different question.
It's completely different platform. It's a completely different platform.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Anissa, welcome. You had some thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings. My emotions are big on this one. And I tried to love this for 9 months. I really tried, because the proposition for my smaller clients is great, with having BigQuery to use, being able to actually get like a full-on data warehouse solution and a good integration with Data Studio. But then it came to this, and we still don't have a proper integration with Data Studio. Good thing about GA4, which I agree with Greg and everyone else, is that, and Matteo, of course, they changed the data model to something which was more current, or just more fitting the actual situation of how things are. And a page view is just an event, so I don't read it as another event. But everything else, everything that they could have gotten right is, sorry, but this is just not it. I have so many subscription-based customers, or customers with subscription-based data models, business models, sorry, or complex business models, where you can have different goals to actually set up for monetization. They have products which make them revenue maybe 4 weeks after you signed up for something. So you don't have an immediate revenue and can count it as a €0 revenue, but only after 4 weeks there might be revenue. So I cannot stage it. The proposition of custom dimensions is so limited. And no, people, 25 customs are not enough. Not if you do error tracking on your forms or anything like that, or A/B testing. And then they still have stuff that has been requested for years, not in the data model. Like, why do you give me a voucher report if you don't give me a voucher take rate?
Yeah, this is a very big problem. It is a slide that I put because I saw 2 different ways to understand how to use the 25 parameters for events. We have 500 events, custom events that we can use. And for every single event, we can build 25 single parameter for that event. So we can build a very complex data model. But for the UI of reports in GA, you can use only 50 custom dimension with parameters. Is completely don't make no sense. And so
now something happened.
Yeah.
Okay. There it comes.
Yeah.
There it comes.
And so for me, when I talk about this for my client, I suggest there are 2 schools of tools. Create shared parameters like Universal Analytics, so category, action. So you create just 10, 20 global parameters, and you use this for all reports, but you can share and divide by event name, because of course you have to see only a specific events and so. And or the second way is never mind about reports in GA, and I create the right parameters, and this is for me the best way, because we have BigQuery. It completely don't make sense if I can use 25 parameters for 500 events. I have to use a global parameters because UI of the reports, Google Analytics has only 50 custom dimension.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe in the 360 of GA4, maybe will be 1,000 parameters or custom dimension that you can use. But for me, this is a completely no sense. And this is a problem when I need to choose, well, what is the name of these parameters? I choose the first way or the second way. It depends if my clients, if my customer can use BigQuery or not.
Yeah,
So this is for me is completely.
Yeah, but I totally agree. But the thing is, there's already you run into a problem when it comes to global and standardized parameters. That's why we are still not enterprise ready. Because if I have to slice up my parameters just to get enough information, I could go now and do what we did with the 3 columns or the 3 variables we used for event categorization. I could of course do that either with parameters or just put them in one concatenated string now, and then have to slice it up. So actually making me either do that in Data Studio with case when or any kind of ruling, or you make me do that in BigQuery or in some spreadsheets application, because I have to slice up stuff to be able to filter and monitor things. And second, if we go on standardization, let's just think of a website where you standardly use a lot of A/B testing. You want to shoot with every event if somebody has been part of an A/B test or not. So at least one of the 25 parameters for every event is blocked with A/B testing number 1, which is which test have you been on? Second would be which test group have you been on? So I already lose 2 of 25 parameters just for A/B testing. And there's other stuff that you want to probably have with every event just to make a case, because since session is not there anymore, which I kind of support, you actually want to take on a sequence. So you probably will have something like a fake session ID that you push through. So if you look at all these things that you might need to compare a website on a global scale or in several countries or over several use cases, you end up using most of these parameters just for standard session imitation, because that's still how a lot of logic works when you look at sequences and behavior, because behavior is always a sequence.
Anissa, hold on. I hate to interrupt you because
I know,
there's so much great stuff.
I'm too limited to go on stage, because I look at this and I'm like, you had the chance to make it really.
No, I know.
Good.
So I'm the room host, and they pay me big bucks to stop us on time. So.
No, seriously.
So I'm going to do that. Andrej, thank you for leading this. Obviously, you brought up a lot of great feelings. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
I'm so
guys.
sorry.
No.